Hi and welcome to the Geek Legion of Doom. This is a B-movie review. I'll be having a look at the film Megalodon. So, in case you're unaware of what a Megalodon is, this is actually a real creature that used to exist around 65 million years ago. Carcharodon Megalodon was a predecessor to the great white sharks of today, and were the sort of really one of the apex predators of obviously that sort of time, and they grew for up to around 20 meters at their sort of maximum sort of size, and they looked, according to fossil records, very much like great whites do today, obviously aside from the actual the larger in size. So that's the history lesson over. So this film is a low budget film, and is obviously one of the few films that sort of deal with this the creature. And I actually think the Megalodon is actually ripe for a decent film adaptation. There was a series of books that started with the title called Meg, which are apparently based on Megalodons. And there's always been talk of making these into the film, but for now, all we have is this one and a couple of other sort of B movies that sort of deal with Megalodons. So anyway, now this film, if you have a look on places like IMDb or Rotten Tomatoes, this gets a relatively low mark. But I think that's maybe a little bit unfair, because I think people just slam it because of the sort of the CGI and stuff. But I always say, when you're looking at B movies, you have to factor in the budget of these things, and then you're just not going to be able to get like fantastic CGI on sort of these sort of productions. But the basic story, I'll come back to that in just a little bit. The basic story is that there's a new oil rig which is nearly fully automated. It only requires just over 20 people to actually operate it, being sort of tried for the first time to it can drill deeper than any other sort of oil rig that it can. And this sort of company with a CEO were kind of going to go and sort of start it up. They invite a couple of reporters along to sort of to essentially document it. And what happens is that they sort of drilled sort of into this, what they don't realise is an actual sort of huge underground cavern, and initially it unleashes like a swarm of prehistoric sort of dinosaur sort of type fish, basically not sharks, but these other sort of other ones. It kind of launches a lot of them, and one gets caught in a sort of a pipe in the machines and actually ends up biting one of the workers and sort of puts him in a sort of quite a bad state, because obviously there's a bacteria that hasn't been around for a long time. And eventually we sort of see in these caverns, and there's all these sort of different massive jellyfish, and and it looks all very pretty first of all. But what they actually don't realise is that there's actually megalodons, these giant sharks that have been living in this sort of like almost like a complete ecosystem. And we don't know exactly how big these sort of underground caverns are, but it's made out to be pretty big. Now, scientifically that's probably fairly unlikely, but you're going to have this whole ecosystem in sort of almost like in this sort of trapped world, because there must be some sort of currents going in and out of that place. You couldn't have this whole ecosystem with this sort of all these massive creatures trapped in there for such a long time. But there you go. We'll look past that little bit of the science, but there you go. So of course they unwittingly let out one of these megalodons, and it ends up attacking the crew of this station. Basically, a lot of them, they have this like glass elevator that sort of goes down to the bottom of the sea, where they can kind of like look at what's going on and things like that, the drilling and everything. And it attacks that and the sort of submarines that are sort of going around, these little mini one-man subs. And it damages the sort of the elevator shaft, and basically they have to kind of like evacuate, and the shark attacks them and whatnot. So that's really the plot. So here's what I didn't like about this particular film. Now, I've mentioned it at the beginning that the CGI. There are a couple of shots where the CGI looks quite good. There's a shot at the end where you sort of see a Megalodon sort of swing underneath a sailboat, and that looks quite good. Some of the helicopter shots look quite good as well. I actually thought it was a real helicopter, first of all. But the actual CGI of the shark itself, it isn't particularly fantastic. It kind of looks far too sort of clean and computer generated, and it also doesn't move in a necessarily realistic manner. Like I said, I mean, these things are primarily probably a budget issue, so it depends on whether you can be forgiving on these things or not. But this is the true of all of these sort of more modern sort of B movies. In Hand and Hammer, that I'd also have to say maybe the sets aren't particularly realistic. It's supposed to be in an oil rig, but it all looks very sort of clean and scientific to me. Doesn't really look like a real oil rig would look. And also the actors, they never sort of seem to be particularly dirty and stuff like that. On the subject of actors, they say it only needs to have over 20 odd people to run this oil platform, but we only ever see sort of 6 or 7. So I don't know what happened to the rest of the crew. The other main criticism I would say is we don't actually see the Megalodon, and it's not even around until the last third of this film. So the first sort of the 2/3 of this film really are dealing with the sort of ecological impacts of drilling and things like that, and the sort of the kind of like mystery about what this cavern is and things like that. So as a kind of horror film, it doesn't really get any sort of traction until the shark shows up, and that's like say 2/3 of the film in. And I've got to say, I actually think the last third is almost a weaker film in a lot of ways, because it then sort of goes into sort of you see a lot more of the shark, which has the sort of the lesser CGI, and the shark seemingly sort of knows how to bust through ice and pick up people that happen to sort of be laying on the ice and things like that, which is kind of how would it know that, so there are sort of when the shark shows up, it almost kind of makes it look more like a B movie. Right, so what I did like about this film, a couple of things I actually thought were quite good, and I'll talk about the characters first of all. Normally in these films, you kind of get like the asshole characters that are going to die, who are kind of like maybe almost sort of semi-antagonists in the way. But in this film, you don't have that at all. You have different points of view, but no one is a particular asshole. There's no sort of there's discussions about different point of views and stuff. But I like the fact that, generally speaking, the group of people that are there are professional people. They sort of say their arguments articulately about their sort of opposing point of views and things like that. And the main sort of oil baron guy is not treated as this sort of like cliche sort of, doesn't care about anything apart from a profit sort of oil baron type of guy. He's actually treated as more of a sort of, just an entrepreneur really. And I quite like that. I also thought the acting, although it's a mixed bag, there's a character called Ross who's kind of like this environmentalist. He's not an environmentalist. He's kind of like he's part of the crew of this the oil rig, but he has some environmental angle with him, and he looks a lot like William Peterson from the original CSI series, Grissom. Looks very much like that, but he was by far the most interesting character, and I thought he had a really good earnest performance. Some of the acting for the minor characters isn't too fantastic. You've also got Mark Sheppard in there as a sort of like the one of the sort of like the higher ranking people on the oil rig and stuff like that. So maybe the cameraman of this sort of news crew isn't particularly good actor, things like that. But generally speaking, I was okay with the level of acting for this type of film. And I actually found that the subject matter quite interesting. And I guess maybe one of the problems you'll have when you're doing a film about a megalodon, it's not going to be attacking people who are just like swimming around, because for a start, this is only going to be in a lot deeper waters because of the size of it. And also, it probably wouldn't bother with stuff that small. It's only going to attack things, bigger prey, like people in these little mini subs and stuff like that. But at the same time, it doesn't make it as for an interesting film to watch, because it just doesn't seem to be as thrilling as sort of, having that sort of person sort of splashing around in the water and again in a shark. And I'm sure if it would gobble someone up if it had the opportunity. But we're probably not going to get people swimming around at that kind of depth all that much. So just because of the way this film is, obviously it's a deep sea oil platform. Most of the shark attacks are done when people are in either the elevator shaft itself or these little submersibles. I guess one of the sort of minor criticism I would say with this, when they actually do have the shark attack on these little submersibles, all they're doing is kind of shaking the camera, and the people in these little submersibles don't seem to be all that sort of panicked, and even I don't even think they were screaming all that much. It was just maybe they needed to oversell that a little bit more. They kind of undersold that a little bit, I thought. But I actually thought it was a reasonable film. To be fair, I don't think it quite deserves the sort of. I think it's a 2.8 on IMDb. I don't think it's a fair mark. If I'm completely honest. If you got a factor in the budget, I actually thought it was a relatively well thought film. Yes, it does have some issues with it. I'm going to give this one a 5.5 out of 10. So have you seen it? Let me know what you think, and would you like to see more Megalodon films coming out? I certainly would, because I think they're a fascinating subject matter. Leave me a comment and look forward to seeing you next time. See you later.